Vanguard Capital, 47th Floor Conference Room, January 2026. Glass walls overlooking San Francisco Bay, where sailboats cut through water that cost more per square foot to view than most people earned in a year. 5 partners whose combined wealth exceeded the GDP of Paraguay sat around a table carved from a single piece of imported Italian marble. And Marcus Chen, Forbes 30 Under 30, 2 startup exits totaling $200 million, creator of Nextstream's revolutionary AI platform, was watching his life's work disintegrate in real time on a 98-inch display screen. Just a small technical. His voice cracked in a way it hadn't since his first pitch deck 7 years ago. Around him, partners shifted in Herman Miller chairs that cost more than his first car. One checked his Patek Philippe. Another whispered to his colleague about poor planning, the exact words Marcus had used in his TED Talk, the one with 4.2 million views. He clicked frantically. Error messages cascaded like digital dominoes, each one exposing another layer of his carefully constructed empire. His browser history flashed across the screen, his personal photos, his email inbox, all the carefully guarded secrets of a man who controlled everything now spinning wildly beyond his control. The marble floor suddenly looked very far away. Marcus turned toward the door. Escape, dignity, anything, when movement caught his eye through the glass wall. A woman in a cleaning uniform. Latina, maybe 50, her hair pulled back in a practical bun that had seen 1,000 shifts like this one. She pushed a yellow cart loaded with industrial-strength solutions for problems that could actually be solved. She glanced at the screen, then at him. Rosa Gutierrez met his panicked gaze and saw something she recognized from her own mirror on the worst mornings. Someone drowning in their own expertise, suffocating under the weight of what they were supposed to know. She could have kept walking. Should have, probably. Instead, she stepped forward. A stranger, about to save the unsavable. 2 hours earlier, Marcus Chen had closed a $12 million acquisition before most people finished their first coffee. His third company purchase in 18 months. Tech blogs called him the algorithm whisperer. Venture capitalists called him at midnight, seeking his advice on deals that would make or break billion-dollar portfolios. His mother called him to ask when he'd find time to visit, and he'd promised soon. The same promise he'd been making for 9 months. He'd rehearsed this pitch 73 times. Not 70, not 75. 73. He'd A/B tested every slide, every transition, every strategic pause designed to let the gravity of his vision settle into the minds of men who'd heard 1,000 visions before breakfast. He'd even consulted a color psychologist about the specific shade of blue in his tie, one that conveyed both trustworthiness and innovation, stability and disruption. The kind of obsessive preparation that had built his empire. Now he stood before 5 partners whose collective yes would mean $50 million in Series B funding, whose no would mean watching 18 months of work, 50 employees' futures, and his entire vision of revolutionizing content distribution evaporate like morning fog over the bay. His pitch deck, 647 hours of refinement, 11 versions, 3 complete overhauls, was supposed to load seamlessly onto the display system he'd personally tested 4 times yesterday. Instead, chaos. "Perhaps we should reschedule," Richard Vanguard said, and the kindness in his voice was somehow worse than anger would have been. Pity from a man worth $3 billion, landed differently than pity from anyone else. Marcus had built his entire identity on never needing a reschedule, on being the person who solved problems before they became visible, on being the one who anticipated failures 3 moves ahead, who controlled outcomes through preparation so meticulous it looked like magic. What he hadn't anticipated was this: that all his expertise, all his preparation, all his money and influence and carefully constructed armor meant absolutely nothing to code that simply refused to cooperate. The irony carved into him like a surgical blade. He'd built Nextstream on the premise that technology could anticipate human needs, that systems could be perfected, that failure was just poor planning in disguise. Around him, partners gathered their briefcases, arranged their faces into expressions of polite regret. "We'll be in touch, Marcus. Take the time you need to sort this out." The meeting he'd spent 6 months arranging, the pitch he'd mortgaged his sleep and his sanity to perfect, was dying in real time. 12 minutes from handshake to humiliation. Marcus Chen was 32 years old. Successful beyond his immigrant parents' wildest dreams. Featured in magazines, quoted at conferences, invited to speak at Stanford about the future of technology. And in this moment, completely, utterly alone with his failure. He pressed keys randomly now, each command making things worse. Windows multiplying like a virus, his screen becoming a funhouse mirror of his own desperation. That was when he saw her. Rosa Gutierrez had not planned to be on the 47th floor that afternoon. 3 years earlier, this building had been where she first arrived in San Francisco, where her sister Elena worked as a secretary before the cancer turned her body into something unrecognizable, where Rosa had stood in the lobby, holding her 7-year-old niece's hand and promised, "I'll take care of Maria. She'll go to college. She'll have what we didn't." Elena had smiled, that heartbreaking smile of someone who knew they were leaving too soon, and said, "Education is the only inheritance we can give them. Don't let her forget that." Rosa hadn't forgotten. Maria was 19 now, accepted to UC Berkeley Computer Science with a partial scholarship. Partial, which meant Rosa needed $2,000 by Friday for the housing deposit, or her brilliant daughter, the first person in their family to go to a real university, not community college, but Berkeley, would lose her spot. Rosa had $600 in her checking account. She'd been strategizing for weeks, which bills could wait, which couldn't, whether she could pick up extra weekend shifts without collapsing from exhaustion. The math wasn't working. That afternoon, Rosa had traded shifts to work the executive floors. Better tips sometimes, though rarely from people like the tech millionaires who walked past her like she was part of the furniture. Invisible, expected. But her supervisor called in sick. So instead of the 30th floor, Rosa found herself pushing her yellow cart past the 47th floor conference rooms, where decisions worth more than her lifetime earnings happened daily behind glass walls that made everything visible and nothing accessible. Through one of those walls, she saw him. Young man, expensive suit, expensive panic spreading across his face like spilled wine on white carpet. And on the screen behind him, Rosa stopped. That error cascade, those specific red messages creating a pattern she recognized. She'd seen it before, 3 months ago, in Module 7 of MIT's free online course, Common Conflicts in Distributed Systems. She'd studied it on her phone during lunch breaks, sitting in supply closets that smelled like bleach and broken dreams, teaching herself her daughter's world so she could understand Maria's excited phone calls about recursive algorithms and memory allocation. It's just a driver conflict, Rosa whispered to herself, reading the error messages through the glass. The young man was gathering his laptop now, his face flushed with a particular shade of humiliation that came from failing publicly at something you were supposed to master. The partners were leaving, filing out with briefcases and polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Rosa thought about Maria, about the $2,000 deposit, about her sister Elena, who wouldn't have hesitated. Elena had always said, "If you can help, help. The rest is just fear wearing different masks." Rosa's hand tightened on her cart handle. Being invisible meant safety, meant keeping your head down, your opinions to yourself, your knowledge hidden because women who looked like her weren't supposed to know about distributed systems and driver conflicts. Being invisible meant missing your moment to be seen. Before she could talk herself out of it, Rosa pushed her cart toward the conference room door. Marcus's hand was on his laptop case. Expensive Italian leather, monogrammed, a gift to himself after his second exit, when he heard it. A knock. Soft, uncertain. The kind of sound that didn't belong in a place where confidence was currency. He turned. The cleaning woman stood in the doorway, one hand still on her yellow cart. Something in her expression that looked like, what? Pity. Recognition? The particular gentleness people reserved for watching someone come apart at the seams? Every instinct Marcus had cultivated over a decade of building empires told him to wave her away, to preserve what microscopic shred of dignity remained, to not add "rescued by the janitorial staff" to today's growing list of humiliations that would probably be circulating through venture capital circles by dinner. But something in her eyes stopped him. She didn't look at him the way the partners had, with that mix of disappointment and schadenfreude that powerful people wore when watching someone fail. She didn't look at him the way his employees did, with the careful neutrality of people whose mortgages depended on his success. She looked at him the way his mother had, years ago, when he'd failed his first startup and spent 3 days on her couch, convinced his life was over. Not like he was broken, like she'd been exactly where he was standing, like she knew the way out. "Disculpe," she said quietly, her accent wrapping around the syllables in a way that made the apology sound like an offering. "I think I can help." Marcus stared at her, at the cart loaded with cleaning supplies, at the worn uniform that had seen 1,000 floors like this one, at hands that looked like they knew hard work in ways his never would. "I appreciate the offer," he heard himself say, each word carefully measured. "But this is a highly technical issue with a display integration protocol." "Driver conflict," Rosa interrupted, pointing at the screen with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were looking at. "Your presentation software is trying to initialize the same memory resources as your security suite. They're fighting for exclusive access, creating a race condition." The words hung in the air like impossible mathematics. Marcus blinked, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "How do you? May I?" Rosa gestured at his laptop, and Marcus Chen, who had never let anyone touch his systems, who had NDAs thicker than the Bible, who controlled every variable down to the pixel, stepped aside. Rosa pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked in 3 places, held together with a case that had cost maybe $10. She pulled up a screenshot from what looked like course materials, placed it beside his error message. See? Her finger traced the pattern. Same cascade. The security suite is timing out the presentation layer because both processes think they own the display driver. Her fingers moved across his keyboard with surprising speed. Not fumbling, not hesitant. Like she'd done this before, many times, in situations that mattered. She opened the task manager, identified the conflicting processes with the precision of a surgeon, terminated them in a specific sequence that Marcus hadn't even known existed. Then she modified a registry setting buried so deep in the system architecture that he'd never thought to look there. 30 seconds, maybe less. Try it now. Marcus pressed the space bar, holding his breath like a man underwater. His presentation loaded. Perfect. Every slide in sequence. Every transition smooth as silk. Every embedded video ready to play. The 18 months of work that had been disintegrating 5 minutes ago now glowed on the screen like it had never been broken. He stared at the display, then at Rosa, then back at the display. How did you learn that? Rosa smiled. Small and knowing. The smile of someone very familiar with that particular flavor of disbelief. The smile of someone who'd spent a lifetime being underestimated and had made peace with the surprise that came when she proved people wrong. YouTube University, she said simply, and a lot of practice time while other people sleep. She started gathering her cart, preparing to disappear back into the invisible machinery of the building. Back to emptying trash cans and scrubbing floors, while people who made in an hour what she made in a month walked past her like furniture. Wait. Marcus's voice cracked again, but differently this time. What's your name? She paused. People didn't usually ask her name. Didn't usually see her as someone worth remembering. Rosa. Rosa Gutierrez. Rosa. He said it like he was memorizing it, like it mattered. You saved my entire company, my employees' jobs, everything I've been building. She shrugged, and the gesture contained entire universes of humility. I just fixed a computer, senor. You should call your partners back, while it's still working. Right. Yes, of course. But Marcus didn't move toward his phone. He stood there, laptop forgotten, staring at this woman who just solved in 30 seconds what he couldn't fix in 30 minutes. Why were you studying driver conflicts in distributed systems? Something shifted in Rosa's expression. Pride mixed with pain, joy wrapped in exhaustion. My daughter, Maria. She's studying computer science at Berkeley. Her voice carried the weight of every sacrifice that had made that sentence possible. I wanted to understand her world. So when she calls excited about her projects, I can understand what she's talking about. So I can be part of her dreams, not just funding them. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. This woman, who cleaned offices for people who didn't know her name, who worked jobs that made her invisible, who probably made in a year what he spent on car payments, was teaching herself graduate-level computer science on her phone during lunch breaks. Not for herself, for her daughter, to be able to connect with her child's passion. While Marcus had built an empire and couldn't remember the last meaningful conversation he'd had with anyone who wasn't trying to sell him something or buy something from him. Thank you, Rosa, he said, and meant it more than any thank you he'd ever spoken in rooms full of people he was supposed to impress. She nodded, started to leave. Rosa? She turned back. Really, thank you. De nada, senor. Good luck. Then she was gone, leaving Marcus standing alone in the conference room, his rescued presentation glowing on the screen, feeling like he'd just witnessed something far more important than any pitch. He called Richard Vanguard. The presentation went perfectly. Marcus delivered every line he'd rehearsed, hit every beat, answered every question with the precision of someone who'd spent 6 months preparing for this exact moment. The partners nodded, smiled, scribbled notes that probably meant millions of dollars. Richard Vanguard himself said it was the most compelling Series B presentation he'd seen all year. They wanted to move forward immediately. Terms to be finalized by end of week. $50 million. Everything Marcus had worked for. Everything he'd sacrificed sleep and sanity and relationships to achieve. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt haunted by a question that had lodged itself in his chest like a splinter he couldn't extract. How does a cleaning woman know more about solving my problem than I did? That evening, Marcus did something he never did. He stayed late at Vanguard Capital, not networking or closing deals, but looking for answers. He found the building's security office, asked about Rosa Gutierrez. The guard looked confused. Why would a tech executive need to know about cleaning staff? I need to thank her properly, Marcus said. They gave him her schedule. Floor 23, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 10 p.m. He found her 2 days later, emptying recycling bins in a junior analyst's office. The analyst probably made triple Rosa's annual salary and left half his lunch uneaten every day. Organic grain bowls that cost $20 and tasted like virtue signaling. Rosa. She looked up, startled, her hands full of someone else's discarded abundance. Mr. Chen. Marcus, please. He felt ridiculous standing there in his $3,000 suit while she held a trash bag. I wanted to thank you again. The pitch went perfectly. They're funding us. $50 million. That's wonderful. Her smile was genuine, uncomplicated by envy or calculation. I'm happy for you, senor. Silence stretched between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. What were you studying? Marcus asked. When you learned about that error? I mean, besides the driver conflict. What other courses? Rosa returned to the recycling, her hands moving with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to make every motion count. Computer science. Online courses. MIT has amazing free programs. Stanford too. Some from Google. All free if you have internet and time. She glanced at him. I like understanding how things work. Why, though? The question came out wrong, and Marcus immediately regretted it. I mean, you work here. You could be... He stopped, hearing too late how it sounded. Rosa straightened, met his eyes with a directness that made him feel simultaneously seen and judged. I could be what, Mr. Chen? A programmer? An engineer? Her voice was gentle, not angry, but it cut deeper than anger ever could. I have a 7th grade education from Oaxaca. No papers, a daughter to support. This job lets me do that. It gives me health insurance. Lets me send money to Maria. Keeps a roof over our heads. Marcus felt heat creep up his neck. I didn't mean... I know you didn't. She softened, recognizing his mortification for what it was. Ignorance, not malice. Most people don't see me at all. You're already doing better than average just by asking my name. The words landed like a gentle indictment of everything Marcus had spent his life building. An empire where people were resources, metrics, conversion rates, and retention statistics. "How much is your daughter's housing deposit?" he asked suddenly. Rosa's back went rigid, every muscle tensing like she'd been struck. "I'm not asking for charity, Mr. Chen. I'm not offering it." Marcus interrupted, the idea forming even as he spoke it. "I'm offering a job." The words surprised him as much as they surprised her. Rosa stared at him. "A job? My company? Next Stream? We need people who can solve problems, who can learn, who can see what others miss." He was talking fast now, the way he did when an idea caught fire in his mind and started burning through his careful logic. "What you did the other day, that wasn't just technical knowledge. That was pattern recognition, systems thinking, the ability to see connections that our entire development team missed. That's exactly what we need. Mr. Chen, I appreciate this. But I clean offices. I don't have a degree. I don't have certifications. I don't have... You have what actually matters. You can learn. You proved that. You taught yourself distributed systems on your phone while cleaning toilets. That's more impressive than half the Stanford grads I interview who can recite textbooks but can't think." Rosa looked at him for a long moment. Really looked. Past the expensive suit and the executive confidence and the tech world armor he wore like a second skin. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered lying, considered saying something about diversity initiatives or untapped talent pools or corporate social responsibility. Instead, he told the truth. "Because you saw a problem and fixed it without needing credit or recognition or anything except the satisfaction of helping someone who needed it. And I built a whole company, employed 50 people, raised millions of dollars, and I still couldn't do that." He paused. "And because maybe I want to learn what you know. I'm a cleaning woman who watches YouTube videos. You're a self-taught engineer who saved my company in 30 seconds. The rest is just paperwork." Rosa studied him, weighed something in her mind that he couldn't see. "What would I do? At your company? Quality assurance lead, testing our systems, finding the problems before they become disasters, teaching our developers to think about edge cases and user experience from perspectives they've never considered." He named a number. $75,000 a year to start, full benefits, education reimbursement for you and Maria. She went very still. That's more than double what I make now. It's market rate for someone who can diagnose system conflicts in 30 seconds and has the humility to keep learning." Rosa studied him, really looked at him in the way she'd learned to look at people over 51 years of life that had taught her how to read what people didn't say. She saw past the expensive suit and the carefully styled hair and the watch that probably cost more than her car. Saw past the tech executive armor and the practiced confidence. She saw someone who'd built walls so high around himself that he'd forgotten how to climb down. Someone who'd turned success into a prison and didn't know the way out. "What happened to your co-founder?" she asked quietly. "The one who should have been at that pitch with you?" Marcus blinked, genuinely surprised. "How did you—" "Your presentation, slide 3, founded by Marcus Chen and Sarah Park." "But you were alone that day." His jaw tightened, the muscle jumping in ways he probably didn't know were visible. "Sarah left 6 months ago. Said I'd started caring more about the company's valuation than the people building it. That I'd turned into exactly what we started Next Stream to fight against." He laughed, bitter as burnt coffee. Said I measured everything by ROI, even relationships. Had you? The question landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples in directions Marcus hadn't expected. Yeah, he said finally, the admission costing him something. I think maybe I had. Rosa nodded slowly. My husband died 2 years ago. Construction accident. 1 minute he was there, next minute. She gestured at the absence that still shaped her life. I spent 6 months angry at everyone who still had their person. Angry at God for taking him. Angry at myself for not being angry enough, or being too angry, or... She met his eyes. Anger is just fear wearing a mask, my sister used to say. What are you afraid of, Marcus? No one had asked Marcus Chen that question in years, maybe ever. That if I stop moving, stop building, stop achieving, he swallowed hard. I'll realize none of it means anything. That I've spent 10 years building an empire of nothing. Does it mean anything? Today it didn't. Today the only thing that mattered was that a stranger was kind enough to help someone she didn't know. Someone who wouldn't have seen her if his life wasn't falling apart. Rosa smiled, sad and knowing, and somehow still full of hope. Then maybe you already know what you need to learn. She pulled a pen from her uniform pocket, wrote a number on a post-it note from the analyst's desk. This is my cell. If you're serious about the job offer, call me tomorrow. When you've had time to think about whether you really want someone like me in your world. She handed him the yellow square of paper. When you've had time to ask yourself if you're ready for what changes when you let people in. She left him standing there in someone else's office, holding a post-it note like it was a treasure map. Which, in a way, it was. Marcus told himself it was a one-time thing. A strange, beautiful accident that couldn't happen again. A clean-in woman who knew distributed systems wasn't going to revolutionize his company. A single conversation in an empty office wasn't going to change the fundamental architecture of his life. He had $50 million to deploy, a company to scale, employees depending on him, investors expecting returns. The machinery of empire didn't stop turning just because someone had shown him kindness. He placed the post-it note on his desk at Next Stream headquarters, told himself he'd throw it away tomorrow. But 3 days later, staring at it during a conference call about user acquisition metrics and conversion funnels, Marcus found himself thinking about what Rosa had asked him. What are you afraid of? And underneath that question, another one that scared him more. What if the thing I've been running from my whole life is the only thing that could actually save me? He picked up his phone, dialed the number. Rosa answered on the third ring. Mr. Chen. Marcus. Please, just Marcus. He took a breath that felt like jumping off a cliff. I've had time to think. I want to hire you, not as charity, not as some feel-good diversity initiative, as quality assurance lead. Starting salary $75,000 a year, full benefits, education reimbursement for both you and Maria. Silence stretched across the line like a tightrope. Rosa? That's... Her voice caught. That's more than double what I make now. It's market rate for someone who can diagnose system conflicts in 30 seconds. For someone who sees patterns our entire development team misses. Another pause. Longer this time. Marcus could hear her breathing. Could almost feel her weighing everything this meant. When do I start? If you're feeling what Marcus is feeling right now, That unexpected moment when taking a risk on someone changes everything. Hit that subscribe button, because this story is just beginning. And what happens next will show you whether Rosa can truly transform Marcus's company, or if the tech world will chew her up and spit her out. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever taken a chance on someone everyone else overlooked? What happened? I read every single one. Now let's see what happens when Rosa steps into a world that was never designed for someone like her. 6 weeks changed everything. Rosa's first day at Nextstream's headquarters felt like landing on an alien planet. Open floor plan stretching across an entire floor of a building where the rent per month exceeded her annual salary at Vanguard Capital. Standing desks that adjusted with the touch of a button. Cold brew coffee on tap, 3 different varieties. A meditation room. A game room with vintage arcade machines. Everyone under 35, dressed in hoodies that cost more than her best dress. She wore her best outfit that morning. 10 years old but carefully pressed the night before. Maria helping her choose accessories that might make her look less out of place. She still looked out of place. The developers stared when Marcus introduced her. Not hostile exactly, just confused. Their eyes asking questions their mouths were too polite to voice. Why is she here? What does she know? Did Marcus really hire his cleaning lady? This is Rosa Gutierrez, our new QA lead. Marcus announced in the morning stand-up, his voice carrying the particular authority of someone who expected to be believed. She's the one who saved our Series B pitch when our entire system crashed. Some of you heard about that disaster. She fixed it in 30 seconds. Their skepticism was palpable, hung in the air like smoke. Rosa proved herself within a week. Found 3 critical bugs the development team had missed. Edge cases they'd never considered because they'd never had to think about users who didn't have perfect internet connections, who didn't upgrade their phones every year, who used technology as a tool rather than a lifestyle. She suggested UI improvements based on how normal people actually use software, and the designers grudgingly admitted she was right. The confirmation button should be bigger. The error messages should actually explain what went wrong in language humans could understand. She stayed late, helping junior developers debug their code, patient in ways that reminded them of teachers they'd loved, asking questions instead of giving answers. One developer, Priya, Stanford grad, brilliant coder, perpetually anxious, told Marcus after a particularly brutal code review that Rosa had salvaged. I don't know where you found her, but she sees things we're all too close to notice. She thinks about the people using this, not just the people building it. Rosa learned the office rhythms faster than Marcus had expected. The standing meetings that could have been emails. The Slack channels where real decisions got made in side conversations. The unwritten rules of tech culture. Who spoke first in meetings, whose opinions carried weight, how to disagree without seeming disagreeable. She brought homemade tamales on Fridays. Started a beginner coding lunch group for the non-technical staff, marketing, operations, the office manager who'd always wanted to learn but felt intimidated. She treated the facilities team, her former colleagues, with the same respect she showed the senior engineers. Marcus watched her navigate his world with more grace than he'd ever managed, and felt something he couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe, or envy, or the uncomfortable recognition that she was better at being human than he'd ever learned to be. Their conversations became routine in the best way. Morning coffee, week 3. The office still quiet, just the two of them and the hum of servers in the next room. "Do you regret leaving the cleaning job?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Rosa considered the question while she doctored her coffee with cream and sugar, luxuries she'd rarely allowed herself before. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. Clock in, clock out, go home to Maria. Nobody expecting pieces of me I wasn't sure I had to give." She gestured at the office around them. "This requires parts of myself I'd kept protected." "What parts?" "Hope." The word came out quiet. "Hope that I could be more than survival mode, that I could think past next month's rent and Maria's tuition. That's terrifying, Marcus." Having room to dream. Marcus understood that more than he wanted to admit. He'd spent so long achieving that he'd forgotten how to want anything except more achievement. Lunch, week 5. Rosa had gotten comfortable enough to ask the questions that mattered. Why did Sarah really leave? Marcus picked at his salad, organic greens that tasted like expensive grass. "She said I measured everything by ROI, even relationships. That I'd optimized the humanity out of the company we built together." He met Rosa's eyes. "That I'd turned NextStream into exactly what we started it to fight against. Corporate machine consuming people and calling it innovation." "Had you?" "Apparently." The admission cost him something. "I didn't see it happening. Thought I was just being efficient. Thought caring about the bottom line was the same as caring about the people. So why are you changing now?" He set down his fork. "Because you fixed my computer, and I realized I'd built an empire but forgotten how to ask for help. Forgotten how to see the people right in front of me." Rosa learned Marcus in pieces, the way you learn someone when you're paying attention. Fragment 1. Immigrant parents who sacrificed everything. His father worked 3 jobs: landscaping during the day, restaurant kitchen at night, weekend construction when he could get it. His mother's English was broken, but her dignity remained intact, correcting Marcus's grammar even as she struggled with her own. Marcus swore at 15, watching his mother ignored at parent-teacher conferences, that he'd never need anyone's charity again. He built his success as armor against ever being seen as less than. Fragment 2. First startup at 23. Sold at 25 for $40 million. Second company doubled that. Built a reputation as the sure bet. The founder who understood markets, who anticipated trends, who delivered returns. But each success meant higher stakes, less room for mistakes, less room for the messy uncertainty of being human. Fragment 3. He owned 35% of NextStream, worth $60 million on paper. But investors expected 10 times returns. His employees expected stability. Mortgages and kids' college funds depended on his decisions. The market expected innovation. He'd become a prisoner of his own success, locked in a cell made of other people's expectations. Rosa listened without judgment, shared her own story in exchange. Crossed the border at 19 with her sister Elena, leaving behind everything familiar for the promise of something better. Worked fields in the Central Valley, factories in San Jose, eventually cleaning services. Met Carlos, construction worker with gentle hands and a laugh that made everything feel possible. Maria was born. Carlos died, crushed under scaffolding that hadn't been properly secured. 2 years of grief that still occasionally knocked the breath from her lungs. Now just her and her brilliant daughter, who wanted to build apps that helped people, who believed technology could make the world better instead of just more efficient. She wants to make the world better, Rosa said one evening. I just want to make sure she can afford to try. Marcus realized something that shifted his understanding of everything. Rosa fought poverty with the same intensity he fought irrelevance. Different weapons, same desperate war against being erased. One evening, after most of the staff had left and the office had settled into that particular quiet of empty workspaces, Marcus found Rosa still at her desk, debugging code with the focus of a surgeon. You don't have to stay late every night, he said. I want to. I'm learning. She looked up, screen light reflecting in her eyes. Do you regret it? Building all this? Marcus sat on the edge of her desk, really considered the question instead of deflecting with a practiced answer. I regret what it cost me. Sarah, my co-founder, my friend, we were going to change the world together. We stayed up until 3 a.m. sketching ideas on napkins, believing we could build something that mattered. Now she won't return my calls. He paused. But I don't know if I could have been anyone else. This drive, this need to build and prove and achieve. I don't know how to turn it off. Rosa nodded slowly, recognition in her expression. I used to think that about Carlos's death, that it had to consume everything, that there was no room for anything except grief and survival, that moving forward meant betraying his memory. And now I think maybe there's room for joy, for new people, for a life that honors him without being defined by losing him. She met his eye. If I'm brave enough to make it. The words hung between them like a challenge neither was quite ready to accept. What makes you feel valuable? Marcus asked suddenly. Rosa considered, her fingers still resting on the keyboard. When Maria calls excited about a project she's working on, talking so fast I can barely understand. When someone on the team solves a problem because of something I taught them. When I remember Carlos would be proud of who I'm becoming. She met his eyes. Not accomplishments, not money, connection. I don't know the difference anymore, Marcus admitted. Between what? Between feeling powerful and feeling valuable. Rosa's expression softened with recognition. The look of someone seeing straight through carefully constructed walls to the frightened person hiding behind them. That's why you hired me, not just for QA. Because you're exhausted from being powerful and you're hoping I can teach you how to feel valuable again. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Like ice breaking after a long winter. Is that possible? Can someone like me learn that? I don't know. But showing up is always enough, even when it doesn't feel like it. I've built my entire life on being enough by doing more, by achieving more, by controlling more. I know, Rosa said gently. I can tell. You're so tired, Marcus. He was. God, he was so tired of running, of proving, of the endless machinery of achievement that never quite filled the emptiness. Later, Rosa would say things that Marcus wrote down on post-it notes and stuck to his monitor. Success is what you build. Significance is what you give away. You've done a lot of building. He asked her once, how do you live with not being able to fix everything? I don't fix. I show up. Fixing is about me. Showing up is about them. Another time, you can't control whether people stay, only whether you're worth staying for. And when his fear got too loud, when he felt failure looming, what if I fail? Then you'll be like everyone else, human, imperfect, Worthy of love, anyway. The first time Marcus overstepped, he didn't even realize he was doing it. It started innocently enough. Rosa mentioned in passing that Maria needed a laptop for her advanced programming course. The university lab computers were outdated, running software 3 versions behind, constantly crashing during the long assignments that couldn't be saved. Marcus nodded, sympathized, moved on to the next topic. That weekend, a MacBook Pro arrived at Rosa's apartment. Top spec, Retina display, 32 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabytes of storage. The kind of machine that could run any software Maria might need for the next 4 years. $2,800 before tax. The note tucked inside read, "For Maria's future. M." Rosa stared at it for a long moment, the unopened box sitting on her kitchen table like an accusation. Monday morning, she was waiting at Marcus's office door before he arrived. "I can't accept this." She held the unopened laptop box, her knuckles white around the edges. "It's just a tool for her education." "Marcus." She set the box on his desk with controlled precision. "This costs more than my rent. I looked it up. I didn't think about the price. Maria mentioned she needed. I know what she needs. And I'm her mother. I provide for her." The words were gentle but firm, each one a boundary being drawn in permanent ink. "I was just trying to help." "No." Rosa sat down, her back straight, her voice steady. "You were trying to fix a problem that isn't yours to solve. I appreciate the intention, I do. But Maria doesn't need expensive things. She needs me to teach her that success comes from work, not handouts. That dignity matters more than convenience." Marcus felt heat rise to his face. "That's not fair. I care about you, about Maria. Is it so wrong to want to help people I care about?" "Then care about us by being my friend, not my benefactor." The distinction landed like a punch to the solar plexus. But old habits, Marcus discovered, were harder to break than code. A week later, Rosa mentioned her car was dying. 12 years old, burning oil, the check engine light a permanent feature. The next morning, a loaner Tesla appeared in her parking spot with a note. "Use this while yours is in the shop. M." Rosa had it returned within the hour. 2 weeks after that, Marcus researched coding boot camps for Maria. Found the perfect one. Stanford's summer intensive program, designed specifically for promising underrepresented students. Started the application process. Listed himself as a reference. Pulled strings with the director, an old colleague from his MBA program. Maria called Rosa, breathless with excitement. "Mama, Stanford sent me this application. They said someone recommended me." Rosa had to explain, her heart breaking, why they needed to decline. Why accepting opportunities Marcus created behind their backs would undermine everything she'd been teaching Maria about earning her own path. 3 weeks later, an office renovation happened. Rosa's workspace suddenly had ergonomic everything, custom standing desk, premium monitor, a chair that cost more than her first month's rent. Herman Miller Aeron, top of the line. 10 times nicer than anyone else's setup, including Marcus's. She saw the equipment, saw the invoice accidentally left on her desk, saw Marcus's approval signature. Each gesture came from genuine care. Marcus wasn't trying to be manipulative or controlling. He genuinely believed he was helping, genuinely thought his resources should serve the people he cared about. Each one pushed Rosa further away. Rosa requested a meeting. Conference room. Door closed. The same conference room where she'd first fixed his presentation, Marcus realized. Some symmetry to that. I need to talk about boundaries. Marcus's stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. If this is about the desk setup, it's about all of it. Rosa's voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap. Every time you help, it feels like you're trying to fix me. Like I'm broken, and you're the one with the tools to make me whole. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing, Marcus? She leaned forward, and he saw exhaustion in her eyes that hadn't been there 3 months ago. Because, from where I'm sitting, you're throwing money and influence at problems I never asked you to solve. Problems that aren't even problems. They're just my life. I just want to make things easier for you. Why? The question cut through his justifications like a scalpel. Why do you need to make things easier? Who told you that's your job? I have resources. It seems wasteful not to use them to help people I care about. Not to what? Save me? Rescue me from my difficult life? Her laugh was bitter. You want to know what's wasteful? Making someone feel small when you're trying to make them feel supported. Marcus felt cornered, defensive instincts rising. I care about you. I care about Maria. I just want to help. Then help by seeing me as an equal, not a project. Rosa's eyes were sad now, disappointed in a way that hurt worse than anger. I've spent my whole life proving I don't need handouts, that I can work for what I have, that I deserve to be here because of my skills, not someone's pity. When you swoop in with your money and connections, you make all of that invisible. The silence stretched between them like wire about to snap. I didn't know, Marcus said quietly. I didn't know it felt that way to you. I know you didn't. That's the problem. Rosa's voice was gentle now, but no less firm. You're so used to being the solver, the fixer, the one with answers, that you don't know how to just be present. To just sit with someone in their struggle without trying to make it go away. Marcus had no defense, because she was completely, devastatingly right. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'll stop, I promise. I don't want you to stop caring. I just want you to care differently. Rosa stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly. I need you to respect that I'm your colleague, not your charity case. That I'm capable of handling my own life. Can you do that? I can try. Trying isn't enough here, Marcus. Either you can or you can't. He took a breath, felt it catch in his chest. Then I can. I will. Rosa nodded. Good. Because I value this job. I value working here, and I value you, our friendship, our conversations, what we're building together. But not enough to lose myself in the process. She left him sitting there in the conference room, understanding, maybe for the first time in his 32 years, that his help could be its own kind of harm. That good intentions wrapped in money and power could suffocate the very people he was trying to support. Marcus tried to change. He really did. Stopped the gifts. Stopped the interventions. Stopped researching solutions to problems Rosa mentioned in passing. Learned to sit with his discomfort when she struggled with something he could easily fix. Learned to ask, how can I support you? Instead of, let me handle that. But 3 months later, he'd make a choice that proved some patterns run deeper than good intentions. Some instincts are carved into bone, and all the willpower in the world can't erase what fear has written there. Pause right here for a second. If you've ever tried to change who you are for someone you care about, smash that like button right now. Because what happens next is going to show you whether real transformation is possible, or if we're all just destined to repeat our worst patterns. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this story is about to take a turn that will either break your heart or restore your faith in second chances. Here's my question for you. Can people really change their core nature? Or are we all just performing until we slip back into old habits? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Now, let's watch Marcus try to prove he's different. Marcus learned to be present. It was harder than building a company, harder than any technical challenge he'd ever faced, harder than raising $50 million or negotiating acquisition terms or managing a team of brilliant, difficult engineers. He stopped offering money when Rosa mentioned challenges, stopped researching solutions behind her back, stopped optimizing her life without permission. He learned to ask, "How can I support you?" instead of, "Let me fix that." He learned to listen when she said, "I've got it," and actually believe her instead of secretly planning interventions. Every instinct screamed at him to solve, to control, to prove his worth through action. His hands would literally itch with the need to do something, fix something, make something better through the application of resources and influence. But slowly, painfully, something shifted. Friday lunches became sacred. Marcus and Rosa and 3 other team members, Priya, Dev, and James from marketing, crowding around a table in the break room, talking about nothing important, movies they'd seen, podcasts they'd listened to. Rosa teaching them Spanish phrases that made James's terrible accent even worse. All of them laughing until their sides hurt. Marcus actually relaxed, let his shoulders drop, forgot to check his phone every 3 minutes. Code reviews became collaborative instead of combative. Rosa catching bugs with questions, not criticism. What if we approached it this way? What if the user doesn't have a stable internet connection? Her perspective making everyone better, making the product more human. Maria visited the office one Thursday, brilliant and confident at 19, full of ideas about apps that could help people in underserved communities. She showed Marcus her project, a platform connecting day laborers with verified job opportunities, building trust in a system designed to exploit them. He gave technical feedback, suggested an architecture change that would make the database more scalable, didn't offer funding, didn't offer connections to investors, just encouragement, the kind of mentorship that honored her work without trying to own it. Mariah hugged him when she left. "Thanks, Marcus. You actually get it." One Thursday evening, after everyone else had gone home, Rosa looked at Marcus across the conference table where they'd stayed late finishing quarterly reports. Numbers and projections and the tedious machinery of running a company. "This is nice," she said. "Filing quarterly reports?" Marcus laughed. "Your definition of nice is concerning." "No, just this. Working together. Being equals, being friends." Marcus realized that for the first time in his career, maybe in his entire adult life, he wasn't performing, wasn't projecting an image of success and control, wasn't managing how he was perceived. He was just present, just himself, imperfect and uncertain, and somehow okay with that. "Yeah," he said, meaning it more than he'd meant anything in months. "It really is." Hope bloomed in his chest, fragile and precious as new growth after a forest fire. Then his phone rang. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Marcus's assistant, voice tight with a particular strain of barren bad news. You need to see this. TechCrunch article posted an hour ago. Next stream CEO's questionable hiring practices. Tech bros savior complex or genuine diversity. Marcus's blood went cold. The article dissected Rosa's hiring with the surgical precision of people who'd never met her, never seen her work, never watched her transform a team through the simple act of seeing people clearly. Quoted anonymous sources. Probably competitors. Possibly his own employees. She had no degree, no technical background, no traditional qualifications. He literally promoted his cleaning lady to QA lead. Included photos of them laughing at lunch, close-ups that suggested intimacy, implications of impropriety dancing around the edges of slander. The comments section was vicious. Another rich guy playing white savior with charity hires. So we're just hiring people based on sob stories now? What about qualified candidates who went through proper channels? This is insulting to actual engineers who spent years getting degrees. A few people defended Rosa, defended the hiring, pointed out that results mattered more than credentials. Most didn't. The worst part, the part that made Marcus's hands shake with rage, was the comments using her immigration status to question whether she should even be in the country. Barely disguised racism wrapped in concern about merit-based systems and proper procedures. Marcus had his lawyers drafting cease and desist letters within the hour, called his PR team, started mapping out a response that would bury whoever leaked this story. But the damage was already done. The internet had its narrative. Tech billionaire saves poor immigrant woman. Savior complex masquerading as diversity. Rosa Gutierrez wasn't a skilled engineer. She was Marcus Chen's pet project. His redemption arc, his proof that he had a heart beneath the expensive suits. Everything she'd built, every bug she'd found, every junior developer she'd mentored, all of it disappeared beneath the story people wanted to tell. And Marcus, for all his money and influence and carefully cultivated power, couldn't fix it. Rosa read the article in the bathroom, hands shaking so hard she almost dropped her phone. She'd spent 3 months proving herself, 3 months finding critical bugs, 3 months earning the respect of developers who'd initially dismissed her, 3 months being seen as competent, valuable, essential to the team. Now she was the cleaning lady Marcus Chen saved. Not an engineer, not a colleague, a charity case, his redemption story. Proof that Marcus Chen had a heart. Wasn't that sweet? She found Marcus in his office, surrounded by lawyers and PR people planning their counterattack. I need to resign. The room went silent. Everyone out, Marcus said. They filed out, exchanging glances that Rosa pretended not to see. Rosa, this is just tabloid garbage. We're handling it. Just what? Her voice was level, controlled in a way that cost her everything. Just people saying what they've been thinking all along. That I don't belong here. That you hired me out of pity. You know that's not true. Your work speaks for itself. Does it? She met his eyes, and he saw something breaking behind them. Because sometimes I wonder if you hired me to be your redemption story, proof that Marcus Chen has a heart, that you're not just another tech bro extracting value from the world. The accusation stung because part of it was true. Some small, unexamined part of him had liked the narrative. Successful CEO recognizes hidden talent, changes someone's life. Hero story, redemption arc. That's not fair, maybe not, but it's honest. Rosa sat down, exhaustion replacing anger. I can't have Maria reading that her mother only has this job because some CEO felt sorry for her. That everything I've accomplished is really about you being generous. Then stay and prove them wrong. You're brilliant. You've made this team better. Show them that the story they're telling is bullshit. I've been proving people wrong my whole life, Marcus. Her voice cracked. I'm so tired of proving I deserve to exist in spaces I was never supposed to enter. The weariness in her voice broke something in him. What do you want me to do? Nothing. That's the problem. You can't fix this by doing something. She stood, gathering dignity around herself like armor. I need time to think, and I need you to not try to make this better. Can you do that? Rosa, please, Marcus, just please. She left. Marcus sat in his office, surrounded by everything money could buy. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that cost more than cars, art worth more than houses. Watching the only genuine relationship he'd built in years slip through his fingers like water. And for once, all his power meant nothing. Marcus tried to give Rosa space. He lasted 4 days. 4 days of not texting, not calling, not showing up at her desk with solutions or apologies or desperate attempts to make things right. 4 days of watching her work on a different floor, seeing her laugh with other team members, witnessing the shape of his life without her in it. On the 5th day, he did exactly what he'd promised not to do. He called Stanford's Dean of Engineering, old friend from his MBA program, someone who owed him favors from a seed investment that had made them both wealthy. I know someone, Marcus said. Brilliant student at Berkeley, computer science, first-generation college student, incredible potential. Maria Gutierrez. I'm sending you her portfolio. He used his influence, pulled strings, made phone calls, worked the network he'd spent a decade building, made it happen. Maria got the call 3 days later, full scholarship to Stanford's graduate program in computer science. Starting next fall, all expenses covered, stipend included, everything she'd need to focus on research instead of survival. She called Rosa, ecstatic. Mama, Stanford called. They said someone gave them my portfolio and they want me for their graduate program. Rosa's blood went cold. Who? Who recommended you? Silence on Maria's end, confused by the ice in her mother's voice. The dean mentioned, he said Mr. Chen's name, that Mr. Chen had spoken highly of me. Rosa called Marcus that evening. Her voice was ice over molten fury. You went behind my back. I was trying to help Maria. She deserves... I said no. The words were precise as surgical cuts. I told you I didn't want your interference. You agreed. You looked me in the eye and agreed. This isn't interference. This is an opportunity she earned. You thought you knew better. The words cut like broken glass. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You think your money and your connections give you the right to make decisions for my daughter, for my family? Rosa, please, let me explain. I've heard this before. From men who thought I was too stupid to know what's good for me. From bosses who thought I should be grateful for crumbs. From people who looked at me and saw someone who needed saving. Her voice cracked. I expected it from them, not from you. Marcus felt tears. When had he last cried? He couldn't remember. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I did it because I care about Maria's future. And I'm her mother. The words were a roar. Her future is mine to guide, mine to protect, mine to shape. The silence between them was vast as an ocean. I need you to stay away from me, from Maria, from my family. Rosa, I came to this country with nothing. Built a life with my hands. Raised a daughter who got into Berkeley on merit, not connections, not charity. Merit. Her voice was steel and broken glass. You just told her, told the world, that she needed your help to succeed, that she wasn't good enough on her own. That's not what I meant, but it's what you did. The line went dead. Marcus sat in his penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows framing $1 million view of San Francisco Bay, furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries, art that appreciated faster than most people's retirement accounts, and felt the foundation of everything he'd been building crumble. He'd done it again, tried to control, tried to fix, tried to prove his worth through action instead of presence, and destroyed the only thing that mattered. The only real thing he'd built in years. If you've ever lost someone because you loved them wrong, because you tried to fix instead of just being there, leave a comment. Just tell me. I want to hear your story. Because what Marcus does next will either show you how to win someone back the right way, or prove that some mistakes are simply unforgivable. Hit subscribe if you want to see which one it is. And here's my question. If someone betrayed your trust with good intentions, could you forgive them? Or are good intentions just an excuse for control? Drop your answer below. The weeks that followed were the longest of Marcus's life. He didn't call Rosa, didn't text, didn't show up at her apartment or her desk or anywhere she might be. She'd asked for space, and for once, finally, devastatingly, he would give someone exactly what they asked for instead of what he thought they needed. Rosa transferred to a different team, different floor. Marcus saw her sometimes in the lobby, in the elevator, but their paths didn't cross. She made sure of it. Marcus threw himself into work the way he always had when life became too complicated to bear. Series B closed successfully. $50 million in the bank. Hired 12 new engineers, all brilliant, all properly credentialed, all vetted through traditional channels. Launched 2 product updates that the tech press praised. Press called him visionary. Forbes mentioned him again. VCs called seeking his advice. The mask held perfectly. But at night, the questions came. Who was Marcus Chen without the power to fix things? What was left if he couldn't solve problems with money and connections and carefully applied influence? What had he become? He'd built his entire identity on being useful, on being the one with answers, on being able to control outcomes through preparation and resources and sheer force of will. Strip that away, and what remained? Just a lonely man in an expensive apartment, surrounded by things that meant nothing, achievements that felt hollow, success that tasted like ash. The question haunted him through sleepless nights and distracted days. One night, 3 a.m., unable to sleep, Marcus went to the office. The building was empty. Just security guards and cleaning staff. He saw them now, really saw them, in ways he never had before. Wondered about their lives, their families, their dreams deferred to scrub other people's spaces. Found Rosa's old desk. Someone else sat there now, a Stanford grad with impeccable credentials who was good but not great, competent but not transformative. In the drawer, forgotten or left intentionally, was a Post-it note in Rosa's handwriting. Showing up is always enough, even when it doesn't feel like it. He sat there holding it, this small yellow square of paper, understanding finally what she'd been trying to teach him. His worth wasn't in what he could give. It wasn't in the problems he could solve, or the money he could spend, or the connections he could leverage. It was in who he could be. And he'd been so busy giving, so frantically trying to prove his value through action, that he'd forgotten how to simply be present. How to sit with someone in their struggle without trying to make it go away. How to honor someone's agency even when he disagreed with their choices. He'd treated love like a transaction, care like currency, presence like something that could be optimized and scaled. And now he was alone with his empire, discovering that all his carefully constructed power meant nothing without someone to share it with. Marcus started volunteering at Code Haven 2 weeks later. Not at any organization Rosa was connected to. He wouldn't invade her world, wouldn't insert himself into spaces she'd carved out for herself. Just a struggling nonprofit in the Tenderloin teaching coding to underprivileged kids. The kind of program that operated on a shoestring budget, staffed by exhausted believers who thought technology could be a ladder instead of a wall. He showed up on a Saturday morning wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt instead of designer clothes. Asked the director, a tired woman named Carmen who'd clearly never heard of Marcus Chen and didn't care, if they needed help. She looked him up and down, assessed him in 3 seconds, and handed him a stack of broken laptops. Room 3. 12-year-olds learning HTML. Computer lab's a disaster. See what you can fix. Good luck. No strategic planning. No funding proposals. No board presentations about synergies and impact metrics. Just Marcus, outdated equipment, and 30 pairs of skeptical eyes. Marcus was terrible at it. He used jargon the kids didn't understand, talked about DOM manipulation and semantic markup to children who didn't know what a tag was. Couldn't explain concepts without assuming prior knowledge, without building on foundations these kids had never been given. Got frustrated when they didn't grasp things immediately, when they asked the same questions multiple times, when they got distracted or discouraged or overwhelmed. One girl, Destiny, raised her hand 15 minutes into his explanation. "Mister, you talk like my phone when it gives error messages. Can you speak human?" The other kids laughed. Marcus felt his face burn with humiliation. But he came back the next week, and the week after that. He learned to explain loops using video games the kids actually played. He learned to be patient when they needed to hear something 5 times before it clicked. He learned that showing up consistently mattered more than being brilliant occasionally. He learned, slowly and painfully, that teaching wasn't about demonstrating his knowledge. It was about meeting people where they were and helping them move forward. One day, Destiny's code actually worked. She jumped up, screaming with joy, her first functioning web page glowing on the screen. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pure happiness at someone else's success, not because it reflected well on him, not because it advanced his goals or his company or his carefully curated reputation, just because Destiny deserved to feel proud. Rosa saw the change before she admitted it mattered. A mutual colleague mentioned seeing Marcus at Code Haven, teaching kids on weekends. Rosa filed the information away, told herself it meant nothing. A small article appeared in a local community paper, not TechCrunch or Forbes, just a neighborhood newsletter, about tech executives volunteering without fanfare. Marcus's name was buried in paragraph 4. No quotes, no self-promotion. She told herself it didn't matter. People didn't really change. They just performed change until the cost became too high. But Maria wouldn't let her forget. Maria had declined Stanford's offer, called the dean herself, thanked him graciously, and insisted on staying at Berkeley on her partial scholarship. "I want to earn it myself, Mama, like you taught me." Rosa had never been more proud or more heartbroken. Now Maria asked, casual over breakfast, "Is Marcus really volunteering? Teaching kids to code?" "So I hear." "That's cool." Maria took a bite of toast. "Maybe I judged him too harshly. He violated our boundaries, Mika. He went behind my back. He made a mistake, a bad one. But he's trying to change." Maria met her mother's eyes with the particular wisdom of 19-year-olds who see more clearly than their elders want to admit. "Isn't that what you always taught me? That mistakes don't define us. What we do after defines us." Rosa had no response to her own wisdom being used against her. One night, Maria showed Rosa a drawing. Family portrait in colored pencil, Rosa and Maria holding hands, and faintly sketched behind them, like he wasn't quite sure of his place, Marcus. And above them all, drawn in softer lines like he was made of clouds, Carlos's face smiling down. "Why did you include Mr. Chen?" Rosa's voice was carefully neutral. Maria shrugged. "He messed up, but he cares about you, Mama. I can tell, and I think you care about him too. Caring isn't enough if you can't respect boundaries. Papa would have liked him." Maria interrupted quietly. The words hit Rosa like a freight train. Carlos, who'd believed everyone deserved second chances, who'd said over and over, "We're all just trying our best with what we know," who'd forgiven Rosa's mistakes, her fears, her moments of being less than she wanted to be. "Mama," Maria's voice was soft, "Papa would want you to be happy. Not just surviving. Actually happy." Rosa pulled her daughter close, blinking back tears that had been building for weeks. "I know, Mija. I know." That night, after Maria was asleep, Rosa sat alone at the kitchen table with the family portrait spread before her. She thought about Carlos, really thought about him, not just the sanitized memory she'd preserved like a photograph in a frame, not just the grief she'd wrapped around his memory like armor, using it as a shield against anyone who might get close enough to hurt her again. Carlos had been patient, endlessly patient with her fears, her moments of doubt, her tendency to push people away when they got too close. He'd been forgiving. Remembered the time she'd forgotten their anniversary because she was working 3 jobs, how he'd laughed and made her dinner instead of making her feel guilty. He'd believed people could grow, could change, could become better versions of themselves if you gave them space and time and grace. Near the end, when the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, when they'd moved him to hospice and the reality became undeniable, he'd made her promise something. "Don't close yourself off, mi amor," he'd said, his hand weak in hers. "Don't let my death be the end of your living. Don't use me as an excuse to stop hoping for good things." She'd promised. Of course she'd promised. Would have promised him anything in those final days. But she'd spent 2 years breaking that promise, hiding behind single parenthood, convinced that protecting Maria meant keeping everyone at arm's length, building walls so high that no one could climb them. Marcus had made mistakes, real ones, terrible ones that had violated her boundaries and undermined her dignity. But he was trying to change, not to win her back. His letter had made that clear. Not to prove something to the world or to himself, but because he'd finally understood something true about who he was and who he wanted to become. A week later, an envelope appeared on Rosa's desk at work. Marcus's handwriting, precise, elegant, each letter formed with the same careful attention he brought to everything. She almost threw it away unopened, told herself nothing he could say would change what had happened, what he'd done, the trust he'd broken. Instead, she took it to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, read with hands that trembled slightly. Rosa, I'm not writing to ask for another chance. I know I don't deserve one, and even if I did, that's not mine to ask for. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I spent my whole life believing that my worth came from what I could give. Money, solutions, opportunities, answers to problems people didn't ask me to solve. You showed me that presence is the only gift that matters. That respect means trusting people to make their own choices, even when you disagree with them. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's control wearing a prettier mask. I'm still learning. I volunteer at Code Haven now, teaching kids in the Tenderloin who remind me that patience matters more than expertise. The kids there don't care that I sold 2 companies or raised $50 million. They care whether I can explain while loops in ways that make sense. Whether I show up when I say I will. Whether I see them as people, not projects. It's humbling in the best possible way. Thank you for seeing me that day in the conference room when I was falling apart. Thank you for fixing my presentation and, in ways I didn't understand at the time, my life. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. The strength to set boundaries, to protect what matters, to refuse to settle for less than you deserve. Whatever happens, I hope you and Maria find everything you deserve. I hope Maria builds the apps she dreams about. I hope you find someone who knows how to be present without trying to fix you. I hope you find joy. Marcus Rosa read it 3 times, then a 4th, folded it carefully along the creases, precise as origami, placed it in her desk drawer, beneath the post-it note she'd left for him months ago. Did nothing. But she found herself thinking about Marcus at odd moments. During code reviews, when someone asked a question, he would have answered well. During lunch, when Priya mentioned seeing him at Code Haven. How good he was with the kids, how different he seemed. Wondering if he was still teaching those kids, if destiny had mastered loops yet. Hoping he'd learned what she couldn't teach him. That you can't love someone into wholeness, can't fix someone into being ready, can't control your way to connection. Hoping he'd learned it for himself, not for her. Rosa called him 6 weeks later. 6 weeks of thinking, of talking to Maria, of sitting with Carlos's memory and asking herself what he would want for her. Of realizing that forgiveness wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about deciding whether the person who hurt you had done the work to deserve a second chance. Marcus, it's Rosa. Silence on the line. She heard him breathing, heard the catch in his breath like he'd been hit. Then, hi. Just that. Not desperation, not pleading. Just acknowledgement. I got your letter. I didn't expect a response. I wasn't trying to. I know. She cut him off gently. I know what you were trying to do. Silence again, but different now. Waiting instead of empty. I don't know what I'm ready for, Rosa said honestly. But Maria asks about you. And I don't want her growing up thinking people can't change. Or that mistakes are permanent. or that love always ends in loss. What do you want? His voice was careful, like he was afraid the wrong word would shatter whatever fragile bridge she was building. To talk. Just talk. No promises, no expectations, no grand gestures or solutions or fixing. Okay. Coffee? Somewhere neutral? Wherever you want. Whenever you want. Tuesday, 3 p.m. The cafe on Valencia. The one that's not trendy. Not expensive. I'll be there. They met at a coffee shop neither of them had been to before. Neutral ground. No memories attached. No ghosts of who they'd been. Marcus arrived early, sat in the back corner, ordered black coffee he didn't drink. Rosa arrived exactly on time. Ordered tea she held but didn't taste. Just two people trying to find their way back to honesty. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago, Marcus said. I know that sounds like something people say when they're trying to get back into your life. But I've been doing actual work. The kind that doesn't show up on LinkedIn or in press releases. Rosa nodded slowly. I've been doing work too, realizing I was using Carlos's memory as an excuse to keep everyone out. Using Maria as a reason to never risk anything. Including people who might actually be worth letting in. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable, just honest. I'm scared, Marcus admitted, and the vulnerability in his voice was new, real. Of hurting you again, of falling back into old patterns the first time I'm stressed or uncertain, of discovering that everything I think I've learned disappears when it's tested. I'm scared too, Rosa said, of losing myself again, of Maria getting attached and then watching you disappoint her when the novelty wears off, of hoping for something real and finding out it was just temporary. Just another story you told yourself about who you wanted to be. They sat with that honesty, let it breathe between them. So what do we do? Marcus asked. Because I don't have an answer. And that's new for me, not having an answer. Not having a plan. We start small, Rosa said. No grand gestures, no expensive gifts, no pulling strings or fixing problems or trying to optimize our way to connection. Just showing up, being present, being honest. And if it doesn't work, at least we'll know we tried the right way this time. Marcus felt something ease in his chest, like a fist that had been clenched for months finally relaxing. I can do that. Can you, though? Rosa's eyes searched his face. Really? Because I need you to be sure. I can't do this halfway. Can't survive another betrayal disguised as help. He took a breath, considered lying or making promises he wasn't certain he could keep. Instead, he told the truth. I don't know. I want to believe I can. I've been practicing, with the kids at Code Haven, with my team, with myself. But I don't know if it'll be enough when it really matters. He met her eyes. But I want to try. And for the first time in my life, I understand the difference between wanting to fix something and wanting to be part of something. Rosa reached across the table, took his hand. Her fingers were warm, calloused from years of work, strong in ways his had never been. Then let's find out, she said. They didn't solve everything that day. But they started. Months passed. Not the compressed montage version of healing that movies sold. Real months. With setbacks and progress and the messy, non-linear work of learning to trust again. Marcus came to Rosa's apartment for dinner on a Tuesday in March. Met Maria properly this time. Not as her mother's boss, but as someone trying to earn a place in their lives. He listened to Maria talk about her senior project at Berkeley, an app connecting immigrant workers with legal resources and verified employers. Asked thoughtful questions, offered technical feedback when she asked for it. Didn't offer funding, didn't offer connections, just encouragement that honored her work without trying to own it. "You're building something that matters," he said. "That's harder and more important than building something that makes money." Maria hugged him when he left. Rosa watched from the doorway, something loosening in her chest. Rosa visited Code Haven on a Saturday in April. Watched Marcus teach, saw him patient with destiny when she struggled with a concept. Watched him celebrate when she finally got it. "You're good at this," Rosa said afterward. "I'm learning," Marcus replied. Turns out teaching is harder than building companies. More important, too. Pride flickered in Rosa's eyes. May brought Maria's Berkeley graduation. Marcus sat in the audience with Rosa, not on the stage, not giving a speech, not making it about himself in any way. Just present. When Maria walked across that stage, Rosa grabbed Marcus's hand without thinking, squeezed it tight. He squeezed back, and neither of them let go. June brought a near relapse. Rosa's car died completely. The mechanic said it would cost more to fix than the car was worth. Marcus's first instinct was to buy her a new one, or loan her one of his, or solve the problem with the application of money. He caught himself. "How can I support you?" he asked instead. "Just be here while I figure it out," Rosa said, testing him. So he sat with her while she researched used cars, made phone calls, negotiated with dealers. Didn't intervene, didn't take over. Just stayed present while she handled her own life. Afterward, she kissed him. First real kiss, not just a brush of lips, but something deeper. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For learning." July brought deeper conversations. Late nights on Rosa's couch after Maria went to bed, talking about futures they were afraid to want. "I used to think love was about what you could provide," Marcus said. "Money, security, solutions. Proof of worth through action. And now? Now I think it's about who you can be. Who you become when someone sees you clearly and doesn't run." Rosa rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you," she said, the words surprising both of them. "I love you too," Marcus replied. "But I need you to know, I'm still learning, still catching myself when old patterns surface, still afraid I'll mess this up. I know. I need you to keep choosing to be present, even when it's hard, even when fixing seems easier than feeling. Every day," Marcus promised. "I'll choose it every day." They argued sometimes, about boundaries when Marcus's instinct to solve kicked in, about Rosa's fear of depending on anyone, about what moving forward meant, what pace felt right, what commitment looked like when trust was still being rebuilt. But they talked through it, with honesty that sometimes hurt, with presence that sometimes felt harder than running. And slowly, carefully, they built something new. Not a fairy tale, not a salvation story, not redemption through romance. Just two broken people learning to be whole together. Before we finish this story, I need you to do something for me. If this journey, from loneliness to connection, from control to presence, from broken to healing, has meant something to you, subscribe right now, because I create stories like this to remind us that transformation is possible, that people can change, that love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up. And if you've made it this far, 88 minutes into this story. You're exactly the kind of person I want in this community. Hit that notification bell too, because next week's story is going to wreck you in the best way possible. Now drop a comment. What's the most important lesson you're taking from Marcus and Rosa's story? What landed deepest for you? I want to know. 1 year later, not Vanguard Capital's 47th floor conference room where this story began. Not Marcus's penthouse with its million-dollar views and furniture worth more than cars. Rosa's apartment. Small, comfortable, home. Maria sat at the kitchen table, working on code for her senior project, her Berkeley diploma framed on the wall behind her. She'd been offered jobs at Google, at Apple, at Marcus's company. Turned them all down to work at a nonprofit building technology for underserved communities. Rosa stood at the stove, making Carlos's favorite recipe, the one that took hours and filled the apartment with smells that brought back memories that no longer hurt quite so much. And Marcus chopped vegetables at the counter. Badly, making a mess of it, pieces uneven, half of them ending up on the floor. You're supposed to cut them evenly, Maria laughed, not looking up from her laptop. I'm trying, Marcus protested, sheepish. Trying is good, Rosa said, kissing his cheek as she passed. Trying is enough. On the shelf behind the table, Carlos's photos smiled at the room. Marcus had asked once, early on, if it bothered her, having Carlos's picture there while they were building something together. He's part of this family, Rosa had said firmly. Always will be. You're not replacing anyone, Marcus. You're not erasing anything. You're adding to the story. That's different. Now, as they sat down to dinner, mismatched plates because Rosa refused to let Marcus buy her new ones. Laughter spilling across the table, warmth filling spaces that had been empty for so long. Marcus Chen felt something he'd never expected to find. Enough. Not because he'd earned it through achievement or purchased it with money or controlled his way to it through careful planning, but because he'd finally learned to simply be present. Imperfect, uncertain, still learning, still catching himself when old patterns surfaced, still choosing presence over fixing over and over, one day at a time. And for the first time in his 33 years, that was everything. Maria looked up from her laptop. Hey, Marcus, can you look at this function? It's not doing what I expected. The old Marcus would have taken over, fixed it himself, demonstrated his expertise. This Marcus walked over, looked at the code, asked questions instead of giving answers. What were you trying to do here? What did you expect to happen? They worked through it together, Mariah figuring it out herself with Marcus as a guide instead of a solver. Rosa watched from the stove, stirring Carlos's recipe, and felt her heart do something complicated and beautiful. Later, after Maria went to bed, Rosa and Marcus sat on her couch, the one she'd had for 10 years, the one he'd offered to replace a dozen times, and she'd refused. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For showing up, for staying, for learning how to love without fixing. Marcus pulled her close. Thank you for teaching me, for not giving up on me when I gave you every reason to. We taught each other, Rosa said. Outside, San Francisco hummed with its usual chaos. Inside, in this small apartment that smelled like Carlos's cooking and sounded like Maria's laughter and felt like home. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way sat in comfortable silence. No grand gestures, No expensive solutions. No control or fixing or proving worth through action. Just presence. Just love. Just enough.